Broadway, the dream of many the young starlet going back several decades. The appeal of the big stage, the thrill of a live audience. Many dream of feeling the warm stage lights bathing them in their glow and thrusting them into the literal spotlight. Even in the 21st century, the images that are stirred up by a trip to the Great White Way elicits thoughts of a glamorous evening getting dolled up in your best duds for an evening at the theater. But it isn't all glamorous. Sometimes that drive for the spotlight can have disastrous and even tragic ends. Hey kids, welcome home. As you may have already figured out, we're packing up the Press Start family roadster and making our way to New York, and more specifically, Broadway. As we make our way down 42nd Street, we're going to stop for the evening at the New Amsterdam Theater and prepare ourselves for quite the show. Because, unlike most people who come to the theater looking to be entertained, we are here to look past the glitz and glam and cast ourselves in the role of observer into what happens long after the applause is ended and the curtain goes down, long after the audience has gone home. Because here at the New Amsterdam, there's one theater resident who never goes home. Designers Henry Hertz and Hugh Talent had one goal in mind when they conceptualized the New Amsterdam Theater. They wanted to create the most spectacular theater in New York. They approached their design with such confidence that the entire interior of the theater was designed specifically for her inaugural production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And the reviews were in the next morning when it came to the newspapers, as the theater was heralded more for its design than its actual stage production. The theater was thus dubbed the House Beautiful, a nickname that holds firm to this very day. It is also touted as the oldest operating theater on Broadway and is considered to be a New York landmark. The lobby features beautifully ornate marble statues and is also adorned with photos of some of the more illustrious and iconic stars that have graced her stage, including Will Rogers, W.C. Fields, Fanny Brice, and Eddie Cantor. And in the center of those photos is one of the great Florenz Ziegfeld, the namesake and famed producer of the legendary Ziegfeld Follies, a stage production featuring mesmerizing and spectacular sets, lavish and ornate costumes, and the biggest stars of the day. However, the main attraction of the spectacle that was the Ziegfeld Follies was the long line of chorus girls known for their beauty and were considered the best of the best, as they were hand-picked, each and every one of them, by none other than Florenz Ziegfeld himself. The curtain would first go up on this new production in June of 1913 and would herald in a brilliant new chapter in the life of the House Beautiful, and would run strong for 14 years. The culprit of the decline, not just for the Follies, but of the despair that would befall the theater itself, would be none other than the Great Depression, as it ran rampant starting around 1929. In 1936, the harm would prove to be too great, and the New Amsterdam Theater would shut its doors temporarily. An attempt at a resurrection would occur the next year that was sadly unsuccessful, and the decision was made to convert the space into a movie theater. During its years operating as a movie theater, the ownership of the space would change hands several times, each with a new idea on what to do with the theater. The New York City Industrial Development Corporation raised a $4 million bond issue to purchase the property in 1982, and retained title while responsibility for development and bond payment rested with the Nederlander organization. In 1984, the Empire State Development Corporation and New York City Economic Development Corporation purchased the property. After having spent $15 million on the property, Nederlander announced in 1990 that it did not consider restoration of the property to be economically feasible. Thereafter, in 1992, a settlement was reached where the New York State Urban Development Corporation would take ownership and begin structural stabilization immediately through the 42nd Street Development Project. However, the resurgence in activity and the return of the former glory of its youth would return to the New Amsterdam Theater in May of 1995 when Disney Theatrical Productions would sign a 49-year revenue-based lease for the property, and Disney Development would be responsible for the building's restoration, as the building had become quite dilapidated. It would take several years and millions of dollars to restore the House Beautiful to being just that, to its original grandeur. However, it would successfully reopen on April 2nd of 1997, after temporarily playing host to the premiere event for the opening of the Disney film Hercules and a limited engagement run of a concert version of King David. The first Disney film to Broadway adaptation would commence with The Lion King. Since that time, it has also hosted Mary Poppins and was remodeled again in 2013 to play host to Aladdin, which is still running today. It goes without saying that the theater has quite the storied history, and as we all know, when a location has such a lush history, the chances for someone or something to linger only increase. Ask anyone who works at the New Amsterdam Theater if they ever feel alone when opening or closing each day, and they will tell you, of course not. Olive is here. During its original heyday, you could ask anyone who was anyone what the show to see in town was, and the answer would be immediate and irrefutable: the Ziegfeld Follies. The revue-style Broadway show featured a combination of songs, skits, elaborate dance numbers, and, of course, the uncontested beauty of the Ziegfeld girls. Many of the girls would go on to have illustrious careers in Hollywood, such as Martha Mansfield, who would go on to star in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Mary Nolan, better known for her role in Desert Nights, Barbara Stanwyck, who would transfer her talents to the small screen, starring as the matriarch of the Berkeley family in the TV western The Big Valley, and Fanny Brice, who would be the only of the original Ziegfeld girls cast to reprise her role for the film adaptation, working alongside Fred Astaire. But if you were to do a little research into who the most popular of these starlets was, the unanimous answer would come back as the one and only Olive Thomas. Olivia R Duffy was born on October 20th, 1894 in Pennsylvania to James and Rena Duffy. She was the eldest of the 3 children in her family, but her childhood was anything but easy. Her family lived in a more industrial area of Pittsburgh, leading to a life that was fairly gloomy and depressing, as she was surrounded by smoky factories. Olive's father passed away at a young age, which meant Olive was forced to step up and be more of a presence in the household, and also resulted in her having to leave school. At the age of 16, Olive thought that maybe she had found her ticket out when she married Bernard Krug Thomas. However, Olive would soon find out that this was not the escape she was hoping for, as the marriage was not a happy one, and the pair were divorced a mere 2 years later. But Olive would not be deterred, as she literally dusted off her clothes and left Pennsylvania behind, making her way to New York, where she would find work as a clerk in a department store. Olive had lofty goals for the spotlight and, on a whim, responded to a newspaper ad in regards to a contest being run by celebrated commercial artist Howard Chandler Christie, and was for the title of The Most Beautiful Girl in New York City. To the surprise of no one, Olive would be deemed the winner. It was this win that would lead Olive down her path to following her dreams. Olive would model for Harrison Fisher. That would land her on the cover of the Saturday Evening Post. It would appear that her blossoming career had caught the eye of the acclaimed Florence Ziegfeld, who would immediately cast her in his famed Ziegfeld Follies. Thomas would become a Follies favorite, working in the Midnight Frolic, as well as many of the revues. Stunningly gorgeous, she soon found herself being pursued by a number of very wealthy and powerful men who frequented the Follies. She was becoming a household name, which led her to gaining her first film contract with the International Film Company as the leading lady in the studio's Harry Fox movies, although this never resulted in any actual films. However, later in 1916, she would make her debut in a small role that was pivotal to the plot of an episode of Beatrix Fairfax. This led to film work after signing with Triangle Pictures to make a string of comedic films such as Madcap Marge, A Girl Like That, and Broadway, Arizona, to name a few. It would be later that same year, while dancing on the Santa Monica Pier in Nat Goodwin's Cafe, that Olive would meet Jack Pickford, brother of known star Mary Pickford, and the sparks immediately flew. The relationship was full of passion, but was also said to have been quite rocky. In spite of this, the pair married in 1918. Part of the strain was due to the fact that the Pickford family never truly embraced Olive as a part of the family. In an attempt to rekindle the flame of their marriage, Olive and Jack would set sail on August 12th of 1920 aboard the RMS Imperator. On September 5th, Jack and Olive spent the evening drinking and dining before returning to their room at the Hotel Ritz sometime around 3 a.m. Jack went straight to bed, but Olive would remain awake, nursing the ill effects of a headache. Due to her inebriated state, she stumbled around the suite in search of an aspirin to calm her headache. Upon entering the bathroom, she grabbed a bottle which she presumed to be the pain reliever she was seeking. However, as the bottle was written in French, she was not aware as she took a sip from the bottle that she had actually ingested mercury bichloride, poison to humans. Upon realizing her mistake, she screamed loudly enough to wake her husband. Jack came running, just in time to see Olive fall to the floor. Jack tried everything he could think of to save his young bride, including an attempt to dilute the poison with water, and also an attempt to induce vomiting through the use of raw eggs. He also called for a doctor who, upon arriving to the room, tried 3 times to pump Olive's stomach. But sadly, her condition continued to deteriorate. At 9 a.m., Olive was taken to the American Hospital of Paris, located in Neuilly-sur-Seine. Thank you, Press Start Grammy, for that pronunciation. I never would have gotten that one on my own. Physicians tried everything that they could think of to try and save Olive. But sadly it was not to be, as she would continue to decline, and eventually she went into kidney failure. On September 20th, Olive turned to a concerned Jack, who'd inquired after how she was feeling and stated,
"A little weak, but I'll be all right in a little while. Don't worry, darling."
These would be the last words that she would ever speak to her husband, as she would pass away that very day. She was interned at the Woodlawn Cemetery, ironically enough in a grave built for 2, adorned with the Pickford name that she refused to acknowledge in life. She was only 25 years old at the time of her passing, and as we are about to learn, it seems that death could not keep Olive from the stage she so frequently called home. Even death could not keep her from the New Amsterdam Theater. Olive was always happiest when she was performing, so it's no wonder that she returned to the home of her greatest success, the Ziegfeld Follies, the New Amsterdam. The reports are many and are also frequent. Ask anyone who works for the famed theater and they will tell you. Olive never left. In a Catapult article published in January of 2019, Emily Sernaker writes, "The first time I learned about Olive Thomas, I was standing outside the New Amsterdam Theater on 42nd Street, waiting to see Aladdin. I'd purchased the ticket on a whim, alone, and was feeling chatty when I asked a security guard if he had any trivia about the show.
No,
He replied solemnly. We stood there in silence for a while. A few minutes later, he offered,
actually, I do have some trivia. This theater is haunted by a ghost named Olive. The ghost only likes men.
He told me, and that
She's a big flirt.
the audience was starting to line up, and the guard said I should go ask the ushers, the male ones, about her. Inside, I asked the man taking my ticket if he had ever seen a ghost named Olive. His eyes got big.
She moved my walkie-talkie.
Another usher got a similar look in his face.
She rode the elevator with me.
There were more stories. A security guard who quit because of the ghost. Another who heard her playing instruments in the orchestra pit. A props master who watched the walls shake. One of the ushers brought me to a black and white picture in the lobby of a Follies girl, a young woman in her 20s with dark hair and wide eyes, posing in a mink coat. The name engraved on the bottom of the frame was Olive Thomas. After I spoke to the ushers, I kept thinking there was more to the story of Olive in the New Amsterdam. An actor friend with Disney connections offered to help get me an executive interview. A few days later, I was calling the vice president of Disney Theatrical, Dana Amendola, on his lunch break.
You believe in ghosts?
I asked him.
I certainly do.
Said Dana, who had worked there for over 20 years. He was speaking to me from his office in the New Amsterdam, the same one Florence Ziegfeld had in the top floor of the building.
It was January of '97, a very cold January night, when I get a phone call from the security guard on duty around 2 o'clock in the morning. Now his job was to walk through the building and just make sure everything was under control. And he had a flashlight and was shining it over the seats when he felt the presence behind him. And it's one of those situations where it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're tired, you really don't want to turn around. So he kind of gave a look over the shoulder like this. And he saw a woman in a beaded gown with a beaded headdress and a green sash holding a bottle walk from one side of the stage to the other, turn, blow him a kiss, walk through the wall out to 41st Street.
Dana and the night guard called the police, but they couldn't find evidence of anyone. Still, the guard quit that week. Dana was adamant that the guard was not a theater person and would not have known about the Follies girls or what they wore. And yet, old photographs suggest that their outfits matched his description, headdress and all.
But about 6 months later, just before we opened Lion King, I was accumulating all the photographs of the different performers that were in the building, and I invited the security guard to come back. Before I said anything to him, he walked in and he pointed right to Olive Thomas and said, "That's the girl I saw."
Her presence around the theater has never appeared to be malicious. She just appears to want to be on the stage again, and the ushers and patrons seem to be completely comfortable with her existence. The belief long held is that, well, she was here first. Dana would later give an interview to Broadway-focused YouTube channel On Stage to tell more tales of Olive, and it would seem that she wanted to let Dana know she was listening as well.
We had the original three surviving Ziegfeld girls come back to visit the theater. Later on that evening, right when we were closing down and leaving the theater for the night, all the props for Lion King started shaking on the wall. And our head carpenter saw what was going on, turned off the lights and said, "Good night, Olive," and blew her a kiss and walked out the door. And to this day, every entrance of this building has a photograph of Olive Thomas. And when we leave in the night, we blow her a kiss and say, "Good night, Olive." She's become such a phenomenon that people try to hide in the theater overnight. So we do a whole search of the building to make sure no one's hiding to try to find Olive.
What's that noise? Is that Olive?
Who's making that noise?
That's weird.
There's no orchestra tonight.
There's no one, there's honestly no one down
orchestra.
there.
There's no down there.
That's
this
crazy.
Happens all the flipping time.
That's crazy. Olive, we can feel you. We're being nice.
When you love what you do as much as Olive, it's easy to understand how such a tragic end at such a young age would leave a lack of a sense of closure. Olive has become infamous in death less for the fact that she was incredibly beautiful and remarkably talented, but more so for the fact that she is dead, and the sad details of her passing. Olive clings to the glory days at the New Amsterdam Theater, to the thrill of the stage and the warmth of the lights. Olive longs for one last folly, one last curtain call, and it seems that she is perfectly content to remain in the theater that offered her her first shot, the first place that felt like home. Now will be her home, forever. Good night, Olive.
The butcher, the baker, the grocer, the clerk are secretly unhappy men because the butcher, the baker, the grocer, the clerk get paid for what they do, but no applause. They'd gladly bid their dreary jobs goodbye for anything theatrical and white. There's no business like show business, like no business I know. Everything about it is appealing, everything the traffic will allow. Nowhere could you get that happy feeling when you are stealing that extra bow. There's no people like show people. They smile when they are low. Even when they tell you that your show will fall, you may be stranded out in the cold. Still you wouldn't change it for a sack of gold. Let's go on with the show.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Venitas is in our hands. It's left to us, guys. And we gotta do something with it.
Venitas is a premium gaming peripheral brand geared toward developing high-performance products. We're currently working toward creating new, exciting, and unique products not currently found on the market. With quality to match its sleek and beautiful design, I can honestly say that my Venitas mouse is the best that I've ever owned, and I'm looking forward to expanding my collection of Venitas products. Venitas ships internationally with extremely low international shipping costs, and shipping is free to the US and Canada. Your products will arrive quickly and carefully packaged, with most orders arriving within 7 to 10 business days. If you're looking to upgrade your setup in an affordable way without substituting looks, Venitas is an optimal choice, and when you use code PRESSSTARTMOM at checkout, Venitas is offering a 10% discount on your order. You'll be doing mom a solid, and you'll be doing yourself a solid. Everyone wins. Thank you so much to Venitas for sponsoring this video.